The discovery the morning mist clung to the ancient pines like ghostly fingers. And for the first time in 3 days, the whispering woods lived up to their name. They were absolutely silent. No birdsong, no rustling of small creatures, not even the usual creaking of branches in the wind. As a forest ranger, I'd walked these trails for 15 years, and this unnatural quiet made my skin crawl. My name is Jake Morrison, and I'd come out here following reports of strange lights seen dancing between the trees. The locals in Pine Ridge had been talking about it for weeks, blue-white flashes that appeared just after midnight, gone by dawn. Most folks dismissed it as swamp gas or teenagers with flashlights, but the old-timers knew better. They spoke in hushed tones about the last time the woods had fallen this silent, back in 1987, when 3 hikers disappeared without a trace. That's when I heard it, a sound so heartbreaking it stopped me cold. A child's cry, weak and desperate, echoing from somewhere deep in the forest, but it wasn't quite right. The pitch was too high, too pure, like crystal bells shattering in the distance. I'd heard plenty of lost children in my career, and this was different. This was otherworldly. I followed the sound through a maze of towering evergreens, my boots crunching on pine needles that seemed to glow faintly in the morning light. The crying grew stronger, more urgent, leading me to a small clearing I'd never seen before. Impossible, since I knew every square foot of these woods. At the center stood a circle of stones, each one carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. And there, in the middle of the circle, lay a child. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, wrapped in what looked like silver fabric that shifted and rippled like liquid mercury. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her hair white as fresh snow. But her eyes, dear God, her eyes were the deep purple of a summer storm, with flecks of gold that seemed to move like living stars. She looked up at me with those impossible eyes, and I felt something shift in my chest. Recognition, maybe, or destiny. She wasn't human, couldn't be, but she was still just a lost child who needed help. When she reached out her tiny hand toward me, I saw that her fingers were longer than they should be, elegant and delicate, with skin that seemed to emit its own soft light. "It's okay," I whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm here to help." She stopped crying then, fixing me with that ancient gaze, and I had the strangest feeling that she understood every word. More than that, she was looking into my soul, reading my intentions like an open book. When I gently lifted her from the stone circle, her skin felt warm, but somehow electric, like touching a live wire made of silk. The sanctuary back at my ranger station, I faced a dilemma that no training manual had prepared me for. The child I'd started calling her Nova in my head, after the way her eyes sparkled, sat quietly in my spare room, watching me with an intelligence that made my throat tight. She hadn't spoken a word, but she communicated in other ways. When she was hungry, the lights in the room would dim slightly. When she was content, they'd brighten to a warm, golden glow. I'd tried calling social services, but how do you explain finding a child who might not be entirely human? Instead, I called my sister Rachel, a pediatric nurse in the city. She'd always been the practical one in our family, the one who could solve any problem with common sense and determination. "Jake, this is insane," she said when she arrived that evening, her medical bag in hand. "You can't just keep a child you found in the woods. There are procedures, protocols." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Nova. The little girl was sitting cross-legged on the floor, apparently teaching my cat, Mr. Whiskers, how to levitate. The orange tabby floated 3 feet off the ground, purring contentedly while Nova giggled a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Okay," Rachel said slowly, setting down her bag. "Maybe we need to think about this differently." Over the next few days, we established a routine. Nova seemed to understand that she needed to hide when other people were around, disappearing into the small closet in my spare room whenever hikers or fellow rangers stopped by. She ate very little, mostly fruits and vegetables, though she seemed to absorb energy from sunlight streaming through the windows. Rachel ran some basic tests, carefully documenting everything. Nova's heart rate was slower than normal. Her body temperature ran about 2 degrees cooler than human average, and her reflexes were impossibly quick. Most disturbing of all, she had no fingerprints. Her skin was perfectly smooth, like polished marble. Her cellular structure is unlike anything I've seen, Rachel confided during one of our late-night conversations. It's almost like she's made of crystallized starlight. And Jake, I think she's trying to communicate telepathically. When I was examining her yesterday, I kept getting these flashes of images, vast spaces, stars, something that looked like a massive ship. The dream started that week. Every night, I'd find myself standing in a field of silver grass beneath 2 moons, with Nova beside me, pointing at the sky. She'd show me constellations I'd never seen, trace patterns in the stars with her glowing fingers. And always, there was the sense of waiting, of something coming. The visitors on the 7th night after finding Nova, they came. I woke to find her standing at the window, her small hand pressed against the glass, her eyes reflecting the strange lights that danced between the trees. The forest was alive with movement, not the chaotic scrambling of frightened wildlife, but something coordinated, purposeful. Shadows moved between the pines with fluid grace, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with anticipation. "They're here," Nova spoke for the first time, her voice like crystal bells. My family. My heart hammered against my ribs. Part of me had always known this moment would come, but I wasn't ready. In just 1 week, this strange, luminous child had become the most important thing in my world. The thought of losing her felt like having my heart carved out with a rusty spoon. "Do you have to go?" I whispered. She turned to look at me, and I saw sadness in those purple depths. "Not yet, but they need to know I'm safe, that you protected me." Rachel arrived just as the first figure emerged from the tree line. Tall and elegant, moving with the same fluid grace as Nova, but fully grown. Their skin held the same pale luminescence, their eyes the same deep purple. They wore robes that seemed to be cut from the night sky itself, complete with slowly shifting stars. "My God," Rachel breathed, "they're beautiful." There were 5 of them, each one unique yet unmistakably from the same species. The leader, I could tell by the way the others deferred to her, was a woman with silver hair that floated around her head like she was underwater. When she looked at me, I felt that same soul-deep recognition I'd experienced with Nova. Nova ran to them, speaking in a language that sounded like singing wind and distant thunder. The leader knelt down, gathering the child in her arms, and I saw tears of liquid light streaming down her face. The reunion was beautiful and heartbreaking, and I felt like an intruder witnessing something sacred. Then the leader stood and walked toward me. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in my mind, warm and grateful and infinitely sad. "You saved our daughter," she said without moving her lips. "She was lost when our vessel was damaged in your atmosphere. We searched for 7 cycles, growing more desperate with each passing day. You gave her sanctuary when she needed it most." "She's special," I managed to say aloud. I could tell from the moment I found her. "She is our hope," the leader replied. "The first of our kind born with the ability to bridge our worlds. Through her, we can learn to coexist, to share the wonders of the universe." The choice, the leader, who introduced herself as Celestin, explained their situation as we sat around my kitchen table. Nova curled up in my lap like any normal child would, though her skin continued to emit that soft, ethereal glow. The other visitors stood guard. Outside, their forms barely visible as they blended with the shadows. "We are explorers," Celestine said, her mental voice carrying images of vast star fields and impossible cities floating in space. "Our people have traveled the galaxy for millennia, seeking knowledge and understanding. But we have never encountered a species quite like yours, so young, so full of potential, yet so destructive." Rachel leaned forward, her medical mind fascinated. "You've been studying us?" "Observing," Celestine corrected. "We try not to interfere with developing civilizations." But Nova's birth changed everything. She carries genetic markers from both. Our species impossible, we thought, until we analyzed her DNA. She is living proof that our peoples can not only coexist, but thrive together. I felt Nova's small hand squeeze mine. "How is that possible? I mean, you're not even from Earth." Celestine's expression grew complex, layers of emotion flickering across her features. "Your species is not as isolated as you believe. Long ago, some of our people chose to remain on your world when the others departed. They integrated, had families, passed down diluted traces of our genetic heritage. You carry some of those markers, Jake Morrison. That's why Nova was drawn to you, why she felt safe in your presence." The implications hit me like a physical blow. "You're saying I'm part alien?" "A distant descendant, yes. Your great-great-grandmother was one of our people. It's why you've always felt more comfortable in the wilderness than in cities, why you can sense things others cannot. And it's why we must ask something of you." Nova looked up at me with those star-filled eyes. "She wants you to come with us," she said simply, "to help me learn about both worlds, to be the bridge between our peoples." My mind reeled. Leave Earth? Leave everything I'd ever known? But as I looked at Nova, at the hope shining in her alien features, I realized I'd already made my choice the moment I'd lifted her from that stone circle. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. "Jake, you can't seriously be considering this." "I have to," I said, surprised by the certainty in my own voice. "She's just a child. She needs someone who understands both worlds, someone who can help her navigate the complexities of being caught between two species." "But what about your life here? Your job? Your family?" I smiled sadly. My job was always about protecting the forest, protecting the things that couldn't protect themselves. This is just a bigger forest. The new beginning. The departure was set for the following night, during the new moon when the sky would be darkest. I spent the day putting my affairs in order, arranging for a leave of absence that might become permanent, saying goodbye to a life I'd known for 35 years. Rachel helped me pack, her hands shaking as she folded clothes I might never wear again. "Promise me you'll find a way to communicate," she said, "even if it's just to let me know you're alive." "I promise," I said, though I had no idea how I'd keep that promise. Nova spent the day playing in the forest, showing me wonders I'd never noticed, despite walking these trails for 15 years. She could make flowers bloom with a touch, could call deer to her side with a simple gesture. The trees seemed to bend toward her, as if recognizing something ancient and powerful in her. Small framed out as evening approached, the visitors returned. Their ship materialized in the clearing where I'd first found Nova, not appearing so much as simply becoming visible, as if it had always been there waiting for us to notice it. It was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache, all flowing. Curves and surfaces that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure light. "Are you ready?" Celestine asked as we stood before the ship's entrance. I looked back at the forest, at the ranger station that had been my home, at Rachel standing at the tree line with tears streaming down her face. Then I looked at Nova, who was watching me, with complete trust in her purple eyes. "I'm ready," I said. The ship's interior was like stepping into a living star. Walls of crystalline material pulsed with soft light, and the air itself seemed to sing with harmonious frequencies. Nova took my hand as we walked through corridors that defied physics, her excitement infectious despite my nervousness. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Home," she said simply. "To the station between worlds, where both our peoples can learn from each other." As the ship lifted off, I felt a moment of vertigo, not from the movement, but from the sheer magnitude of what I was leaving behind. Through the transparent walls, I watched Earth grow smaller, the forests and mountains I'd known my entire life becoming just another small detail on a blue marble floating in space. But when Nova squeezed my hand and smiled at me with those impossible eyes, I knew I was exactly where I belonged. Some destinies are written in the stars, and some bridges between worlds are built not with technology or treaties, but with love and trust and the willingness to step into the unknown. The forest had been silent until I found a crying child with alien eyes. Now, as we sailed between the stars, I realized that silence had been the universe holding its breath, waiting for two species to take their first steps toward understanding each other. And it all began with a single act of compassion in a quiet wood on a misty morning, when a man chose to help a lost child rather than turn away.